So basically what I want to do is to share the approach that the Department of Energy, Communications and Natural Resources achieved and strive to achieve for clear communications when we were launching our website. It's a really, really detailed project. So in this presentation, I'm just giving a very top-line overview. There were many stages to the project, so each stage could be a presentation within itself, but I don't think we have time for that today. So if you do have any questions or want to delve a little deeper into any of the stages, just get in touch. So with any project, we set goals. So the communication goals for our website was to create a better digital experience for our stakeholders. We know that our stakeholders are consuming information on digital platforms, so we want to make sure that our website was available online, on mobile and on tablet devices. We knew that we had to redesign the structure and information architecture of the website. The department is responsible for many projects and initiatives, so there's a large volume of information, and we wanted to ensure that we were actually conveying the messages clearly on the website. This was really to ensure that the content was easily accessible for our online users, but also that users can find the information quickly on the website. It was key that we improve the quality and clarity of the content with a huge focus on plain language. This is actually the first stage we used a visible thread in this project. Fergal ran a scan on our old website, and what that was able to show us was the areas for improvement. The results and scoring, I guess, from this scan and this testing was really important for us internally because it helped us gain a lot of traction on the project and really helped us influence senior management on why this project was so important. While this was like a new project that we were setting up, it was absolutely mandatory that we had a maintenance strategy in place. So reviewing, monitoring and updating on a continuous basis was a key goal for this project. But overall, the objective was to engage and connect with stakeholders in a meaningful way, and meaningful being the operative word, because we can have as much information as we want on the website, but if people don't actually understand it or are unable to digest it for their own needs, it doesn't work. So, as I mentioned, in a meaningful way, the main reason that people come to websites is to get information, information that meets their needs. So we really had to present our content in a way that they were able to get the information quickly. In terms of content and plain language, plain language was our end goal. But there were many steps that we had to take internally before actually achieving a plain language website. Writing in plain language, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen instantly, and especially within a government department. Government departments have been writing in a formal manner, quite jargon heavy, for many, many years when they're writing reports or acts or legislation. So to suddenly come into the department and say, okay, today we're going to start writing in plain language, that requires a lot of time, resource, training and understanding. So that's why it is absolutely key that we apply plain language to the correct environment. So we have to get the back end right before we actually start having a plain language website. So I'm talking about environment here. For me, there was two key areas to this, the behind the scenes or the back end. It was the design of the website and also the operational side of it. So from the web design side of it, what I mean there is that there is no point applying well-written content or good plain language content on a website that might be cluttered or that it's very difficult to navigate around the website. So what we did is we spent quite a lot of time making sure that we got the information architecture and structure of the website correct. So that it was user-friendly, that our stakeholders could come to the website and use the website quite easily. Accessibility was also key. to make sure that the website was accessible and that we're a citizens website, so we have many different types of people coming to the website, so we need to make sure that we're meeting all needs. The second part was from the operational side. So again, as I mentioned, this whole new way of writing is new to government departments, or it was to the department that I'm working in. And there was quite a challenge, I suppose, to change the mindset and the behaviour of both senior management, but also of the content editors who were actually uploading information to the website. I mean, it was a completely new way of writing, a whole new way of thinking. So we did take a bit of time to make sure that, you know, we got buy-in internally from management and staff. I'll talk a bit more about the resources, training and monitoring in the next slide. But there was a three-phased approach that we took to get this website launched. We spent about 4 months on the planning and analysing stage. And really, I suppose, delving into what it is, what do our stakeholders want, what is the main goal for the website. Then we jumped into the execution and implementation phase. Now, this took about 8 months, 8 months of training up new staff, getting them to think in a different way, to write in a different way, to understand how websites work and how users actually use websites themselves. We also had to develop a new content management system, so this added another layer of training and to the whole implementation process. And then, as I can't stress enough, the first two are part of your setup phase of the new website. But this wasn't just about setting up a website and saying, great, we have that done. It's absolutely mandatory that we had a maintenance strategy in place to make sure that once the website was set up, that it would be maintained and reviewed and monitored on a regular basis. So we actually only just launched the website at the end of July. I've been out of the office since then, so I'm hoping that it still is in working order. And we're now in the maintenance side of things. So I'm going to spend the next few months ensuring that staff are trained up and that the right processes are in place to make sure that we have a good plan. So I just want to go into a tiny bit more detail in phase 1 and phase 2. When I was approached to do this project, the first thing was I wanted to spend a good bit of time on the researching side of it, but also setting objectives. So we actually went out to our stakeholders via surveys and had quite a lot of internal brainstorming sessions to really understand what it is we want from this new website. And from that, and obviously we did a lot of work with Visible Thread to get to this point as well in terms of setting objectives. But you'd be so surprised the amount of companies that don't actually set clear objectives when they're doing such a project. So I really wanted to be clear that we have a firm set of goals, because we have nothing to measure success on if the objectives aren't clearly defined. There then was the next phase of resource. So in terms of resource, management were absolutely 100% behind this project. The Assistant Secretary General were literally on top of this project from day one, and really, really supportive. And I think in any project such as this, if you don't have senior management buy-in, the project will never get off the ground. So we had a lot of meetings with senior management. Through the internal research, we identified that we needed content editors, so people specifically responsible for the web. Up until then, it was whoever wanted to update the web, here's a password, there you go. So I wanted to ensure that people who had access to the website were those people who were trained. And if you weren't trained and you didn't understand how to, write in plain English or update the website, you didn't get a password, simple as that. So there were 40 content editors across this department that needed to be trained up. Again, I mentioned the maintenance side of it was key. So we appointed a new communications officer to manage the project, as well as a communications team. So we have our maintenance plan in place. Then, of course, we had to train these new 40 people. So we set them on an 8-week training program I didn't go directly into here's how to write plain language for the website. We actually had to go back a step to understand the importance of websites and again how people use websites. So going back to the basics to understand why websites are used. And then we engaged with experts along the way. Fergal will talk through how we used his software and your training tools to help us to get to where we needed to be. We engaged with lots of experts along the way. We needed a lot of help and guidance on the best practices and guidelines for getting to the end goal. The site structure was key. We had to get this right. We needed to understand the hierarchy of messages. I mean, this department has 3 sectors. It's communications, energy, and natural resources. It's absolutely huge in terms of the volume of information. So we needed to make sure that we actually got the structure correct and the right messaging correct before we actually started writing about what it is we wanted to write about. We then launched into our design and development phase. Then came the branding side. Now, for me, branding was absolutely important because before this project, each individual sector had its own way of, I suppose, they had its own branding, it's their own logos, their own style, their own fonts. So when you came to our website, before the new website, you could have been on multiple different websites, and each time you clicked into a different site, you could have been on a completely different website. So what we did was we brought everything in hand, and we launched with one logo, one set of brand guidelines, and those brand guidelines and logo have now been applied to the website on mobile and tablet, but also across all the communications material within the department. So whether it's a letterhead, a PowerPoint, a Word document, a business card, the same branding will apply. And I think this is really important for clear communication. So that when users come to the website, it's very clear that they're on this particular department's website. So then I suppose the crucial point was content. And content, again, wasn't just about plain language and writing content in simple English. It was more about making sure that the imagery was clear and that the whole messaging of the website was clear and that it was easy to understand. But we did spend quite a lot of time on rewriting all the content from the old website. This was not a migration, so the old website literally was turned off, and if you wanted information on the new website, you had to go and rewrite it again. It would have been way too easy for them to literally copy and paste information from an old website to a new website. And then, of course, we had to do all the necessary auditing and testing on the website before we launched, again using Visible Thread, but we also did usability testing, accessibility testing, and this is a constant, I suppose, circle, because that was phase 1 and 2, but again, I can't stress enough the importance of a maintenance strategy. It's set up, it's working. We had to make sure that we had the right resources in place, that the right guidelines and processes were set up, that the right training is provided. Also, refresher training has to be provided on an ongoing basis to make sure that we stay a successful website. Continuously monitoring the website, running scans from Visible Thread and reporting back to management. And I think this one is key, is the reporting back, is keeping people in the loop as to where the website is at. And if we get a low scoring from Visible Thread, that will go back to management. And I think you need that level of maintenance in order to have the website as successful as it's going to be. So I just wanted to share a couple of challenges that I faced on this project. The rotation of resources in government. I'm not sure I was prepared for it. I knew that there would be changes, as there is in any Irish government, but the level was quite high. I was assuming that there would be change of resources after the website was set up, but I wasn't prepared for the number of changes that happened before the website actually happened. So it actually added on another month or two to our project because we had to retrain new staff up. So that was a bit of a challenge for me. The other challenge was the perception that plain language means dumbing down content or dumbing down the actual copy. I mean, the number of times that I heard, oh, but our stakeholders have a PhD. It's like, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't need a dictionary to actually read the website. I mean, as we know, users don't read websites. They basically scan it for the information that they need. But, you know, who has time to reread a website or a page once or twice? We just want to give them the information up front. Because of the department we're in, there was a lot of complex and detailed information. So that's why we applied a layered structure to the website. So on the web pages, keep it simple, keep it in plain English, and then if you have complex documents, you know, you can have them as attachments or links to other pages. There was always that the website was last minute. It was the project had launched, the legislation went live, and then it was like, oh, we need to put this in the website. So it was literally a case of copying and pasting the actual act or document, the formal document onto the website, and that was tick, it's on the website. So it was a way that we wanted to shift that mindset that it's not a secondary and an afterthought, that this has to be part of the original planning and the process when you're actually going about your project. So this brings me to the shift in mind and the behaviour change. Don't underestimate the time that it took to actually get this project off the ground, you know, training up new people, getting them to work, new processes. So there was a lot of time, again, as I mentioned, in the rotation of staff that we needed to apply. And then briefing and direction. For me, this was a new one, and I'm not sure if it's the same in other government departments in Ireland, but it was the assumption that the website is managed by the IT division and that the IT guys will do that and they'll update that and they'll make that change. The website is the responsibility of the business. So they are responsible for making sure that they update the content on the website. And that, again, is why we set up a new communications division with a specific communications officer to manage this project. So basically, look, this was an enormous project. As I say, if you have any questions, do let me know after the session or contact me via email. Fergal, I know I briefly touched on what Visible Thread does, but Fergal is going to actually tell you what he actually did with our website to help us with the launch of it.
I was threatening to use the mic there. I'm going to try standing here for once in my life. I normally walk around the place and it's that kind of thing. So look, if I'm speaking too fast, if I'm a little bit unclear, just let me know. But basically, I want to explain how Niamh and her team were able to use tooling and technology to assist the process. This is not a silver bullet stuff, okay? So if you think we're going to magically fix content and do anybody who's consulting on plain language out of a job, that is utterly not true. What Visible Thread was able to do for Niamh and the team was to quantify the size of the issue and to focus on certain parts of the site that needed help. It's a lot of site. She characterized 3 different areas, predominantly isolated, you know, historically coming from 3 autonomous departments before they were merged some time ago. I don't even know when that was. So the issue is, how do you get a sense check? Now, I want to relate this back to the first session or the second session this morning, not Emily's session, but the second one around the framework. This part of the framework, or the part we're addressing, is the text bit, the bit on the left. Do you remember that kind of 3 strands in the framework? We're talking on the left. And what we're going to look at is, how can you quantify this stuff? We're going to measure readability. Now, whether you agree with Flash readability or Flash Kincaid, whether you think passive voice identification is important or not, at least it gives you a barometer, a KPI set that you can take some actions on in a empirical and objective way. It's not my opinion is that your content sucks. The KPIs suggest that that part of the site is more complex than it should be, or certainly more complex than this part. Let's go zone in on those parts. So that's what Visible Thread is very good at doing. So here, how did we measure clarity? It's actually pretty simple, although it's tricky technically, but I'm not going to bore you with all the technology crap. Excuse my language. What's this telling me here? Well, these are different areas: broadcasting, communications, natural resources, energy. Each of those 4 bars represents a scan of a depth of about 500 pages odd. Okay? And the overall scoring tells me here that, for instance, in the energy area, 30% of all sentences are in excess of 20 words online. Now, irrespective of whether you debate readability and so forth, what we're basically saying is that we are putting complex copy that's probably grabbed from brochures or grabbed directly from legislation online with no thought, and it's a secondary affair. We have an obligation to get something online, therefore we'll grab it, we'll copy, paste it, put it online. And that's probably representative of many of your lives, right? So the issue is, how do you quantify it and raise the visibility of how bad this stuff is, or how good it is on the flip, because we want to do before and after measurements. So when we do that, our complex content is really indicative of a non-engaging site, a site that is not working to actually do the outside-in approach. Sites are there to offer two things. One, the audience can complete a task, or two, the audience can find information that they need. That's basically it. That's all anybody comes to a site to do. The task might be shopping, Amazon, or the task might be, how do I file my next tax return? And that's information. But you need a simple, easy path to get through that user journey. And too often it's churning, and what's happening then is you get call center build up and you get cost. So the equation here is a business equation. It's actually, and we talk about business and government, it's an odd conundrum, right? But there is a business impact. It costs more to have bad copy and bad text online. This is one of many different factors. There were surveys, usability testing, all the other factors that was outlined in that framework this morning. This is not those parts, it's just a laser sharp focus on the text complexity. Okay, so what does that actually really mean? This is an example report going down a level. We're itemizing a set of pages here. We're drawing out the content. In this case, what we're saying is that in this particular page, 57%, I know it's tricky to read, but there it is there, 57% of copy on this page is beyond 20 words, and that is just not going to engage. It doesn't matter how many PhDs you have. You're there to do a job. You're not there to get this massive cognitive burden and this cognitive overload that this kind of copy demands. Third level degree readability. I'll call out some things here, and I apologize for the smallness of the screenshot, but basically this is just copy. It's an extract. It's a sucking out of the content online. We use smarts underneath the covers to basically crawl a site. It could be 10,000 pages, it could be 50,000, it doesn't matter. And we'll drill into this level of detail and also surface it at the highest level in aggregate form. And that stuff here, grade 12. How many people are from the US in this room? So a smattering, okay. I should explain the grade. This is the Flesch-Kincaid grade level. The trick with that for non-US folks is add 5 to that, and that's the age by which you need to have finished education. So let me give you an example. 22 means that I have to be in education. Basically, I'm a 27-year-old and I'm still in education to understand that copy. That's the theory, right? Now, you can buy it or you don't have to necessarily believe me, but if you look at the actual copy here, this is our own copy. This one-day training session is designed for new visible thread users who become sorry, but I'm zoned out, I'm not going to engage with this. This is just not going to appeal to me. So I'm taking pop shots of my own copy here because this is our own site. And when you see that actually online, you see stuff like this. The framework and associated environmental assessments, blah, 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 will be prepared over the coming 52 words, chop it, simple, chop the phrases, make it 2, and make it you, me, pronoun-driven, active voice, passive voice, remove it, all that kind of stuff. Okay, none of this is actually tricky stuff, but actually to quantify the thing is the issue because it's fundamentally a manual process unless you have some kind of tooling. So that's the issue. So we're going to see how there's a second element of our solution that uses keyword dictionary type things that are customizable. In this case, what we did was we tested for acronyms. DCENR is the Department of Communication, Enterprise and Natural Resources. PSB, I don't know what, Public Broadcasting Charge. OREDP, I mean, these things are double Dutch to a normal person who's a citizen, who's looking at it from their perspective, not the department's perspective. So we checked this to see how many occurrences we would get across this. Each of these columns are basically scans. That is 100 pages or 500 pages, that's 500, that's 500. And we're seeing these correlations across 145 occurrence of this. We're talking about DCENR all over the place, and we're not humanizing the copy. Now, those dictionaries could equally be risk issues. We need to talk about people with disabilities, not disabled people. They could be medically related issues. We do business with the American Cancer Society. It's very important that they message appropriately to their audience, which is both physicians as well as people with suffering from cancer. So instead of a cancer sufferer, they don't want to talk like that. It's very insensitive. They want to flip it. They want to make it, a person or a disease. That's a bad word as well. So there's bad words and there's good words, and we allow you to measure that across the copy in a systematic way. So the takeaway here, this is sample copy. I'll just read it out because it's probably not that readable for you guys. At the end of their training, trainees completed an online feedback from form describing the training they received and their satisfaction with it. DC and Aura monitor and receive. Look, I won't read it. It's silly. The point is that it's too long-winded. It needs to be chopped, and it's got oodles of acronyms in there. So the intent of that copy is not great. So what we're doing right now, what Neve's team are doing, is that they're acting on this kind of guidance. It's a recipe for the fix, and they're able to fix it and actually go forward. At this point, thank you for your time. I just want to kind of say thanks to Neve for her support in the overall project, and I'll hand it over to the next session, or the next part.
Thanks very much. I'd like to address this question to Neve. You were talking about 40 content editors and 8 weeks of training, and I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on that, maybe talk a bit about the training, what it involved, what length of time was involved, the topics, and how you evaluated at the end if people were ready to write for the website. Any information on that would be very interesting. Thanks.
Is this mic working? Right, so the 40 editors were selected from managers across the division, across the department. So within the department, there are 3 main sectors: communication, energy, natural resources. Under each one of those sectors, there's what we call divisions. So there could be 6 to 8 divisions under each of those sectors. So what we had to do was to select content editors that would represent each one of those divisions. And that's why you have such an enormous amount of people. I mean, in another company, you may just have a small team of 5 managing the website. But we had to, I suppose, put 40 people on it because of the way the department is structured, but also because of the way the rotation of staff. So if a staff moved, they could move from one division to another, or to another sector, or to a completely different department. So I wanted to have as many people trained up as possible. So when I looked at the training, digital was quite new to the department. Understanding websites and the reason for having a website was very, very new to the department. So the training had to go right back. It was 8 modules, and it was held over an 8-week period. I wanted 1 module per week, so they have time to digest it and follow up with the module. So the first one was really looking at websites and why we actually develop websites and how users use websites. We had a fantastic session from Conor Pope in the Irish Times, where he literally tore our website apart and told us how we could actually improve it. But it was very beneficial for us to hear from a professional in the field what we were doing wrong and what we could do better. We also had experts from SEO, so search engine optimization. We obviously had Fergal in talking about the importance of clarity and plain English. We also had Donal Rice from the NDA, and he's just absolutely amazing in his field and really brought it to life to show why it's so important to have a website that users can understand. We also looked at Google Analytics. So one of our reporting tools is looking at Google on a continuous basis to see what pages people are reading, how long are they spending on the page, what are the bounce rates. So we had to train staff up on what Google Analytics was. So it was very much an overview of the whole kind of how marketing and digital marketing works. The maintenance plan will focus primarily on plain language, so we will be working with NALA on training staff specifically on plain language. As I say, there was in total it was about a year to put this project together, and the time it took was more or less in the training and changing the mindset of people internally. It wasn't about the actual doing or the implementation. So refresher training in the future is going to be absolutely crucial to keep the website at the level that we need it to be at.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Neve. Any other questions? Yeah, the front.
Question for Neve. You mentioned that.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, we just get the microphone. Yeah.
You mentioned that 40 content editors. In my organisation, we're looking at 400. And I was just wondering about auditing the standard across a number of people like that. Do you have a central unit that looks and monitors what the content editors are doing?
Exactly, and that's just been set up
Yeah.
as a result of this project. We probably had 400 people editing the website too, and that's why it looked the way it did, because everybody has their own style, their own way of writing. The 40 editors were all trained. They all got the exact same training. I was extremely lucky in that the people that were provided to me for that role were actually all, they were all pretty good and they really understood digital, they understood it. What they didn't have was the time to actually do or rewrite the content in plain language. So that's where we actually went and trained senior management as well. And we actually brought in the experts to tell them what needs to be done so that they could influence and allow the content editors to get on and do the job that they needed to do.